Hi, Shepherd's Pie. Greetings from the Philippines. Welcome back to the channel for another interview. We all love an interview on this channel, don't we? I'm sitting down today with a very interesting fellow. He is my new friend Patrick, who also happens to be my neighbour. He is from the USA and he's been in the military. He's done quite a lot. So he's going to be an interesting chap. I'm quite sure of this. We've spoken a few times, but there's a lot to find out about him. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. So thanks for sitting down with us today, Patrick. It is much appreciated.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did it all start? From the beginning, where are you from, mate?
Where did it all start? So, father was actually in the military also. He was in the Navy. So, we moved around quite a bit, Navy wise, California mainly. And then he was born and raised in Colorado. And so, when he retired, we went to Colorado. That's where I finished going to high school. And from high school, I went directly into the military, went into the Army. And then from that point on, I guess that kind of led to me spending a lot of time in Europe. That was my first duty station, was in Germany.
Okay,
And
let's roll back a couple of minutes because it's going to be a very quick interview.
okay.
What's Colorado like to live in? Was it a nice place? Happy there or?
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, it wasn't bad. I enjoyed Colorado. I consider that probably, I guess, in the beginning, militarily, when they ask you where your home state is. I mean, it was Colorado, but that was, I mean, I guess I started sixth grade, and then went into junior high school, and then from junior high school into high school. So, if anybody is familiar with Fort Collins, Colorado, I mean, that's kind of where I was. It used to actually be a pretty large open area, and it has become like a closet now at this point in time with the way that it used to be. You used to be able to go from Fort Collins to Loveland, and there was like literally 7 miles in between there. That was nothing. I used to rabbit hunt, used to shoot my 22 all the time, used to do a lot of different things. Now, if you go there, literally Loveland and Fort Collins are connected.
Wow.
There's no open space there whatsoever anymore. Um, Fort Collins is CSU, Colorado State University. So there was, kind of, I guess, a little bit of a happen in town. I didn't, I mean, I guess when I was in high school, I was, wanted to go out and party and do all that other stuff, but not a bad place to grow up, to get raised. It was actually a pretty nice area, and then plus very mountainous. My dad and I used to go out and go fishing up in the mountains all the time and different things like that. So, yeah, as in raised. I mean, like I said, my dad retired from the Navy, and that's where he was born and raised, was in Fort Collins. So that's kind of where we ended up, in Fort Collins. And then I guess my life started at that point after I got done with high school and joined the Army.
And did you have your heart set on the army, or was it? I mean, was that something you'd always planned to go in the military?
Not necessarily. I think my military career started out with probably something I probably should do, or probably end up in jail. So,
Mm.
um, but it's like, so my dad had mentioned, it's like he knew me. He's like, the Navy's not the way to go for you. So I did not go to the Navy recruiter. I went to the Air Force recruiter, spoke to them a little bit. Well, I guess I can't even really remember much of what we even talked about, so it must not have been all that great. And then, so my two options, obviously, I think because I was scholastic, somewhat scholastic and athletic at the time, my school days really revolved around sports. It was really the only reason I did any good in school, was so I could play sports and not be eliminated from being able to play sports. So I don't think I ever actually even made it to the Marine Corps to talk to the recruiters there. I went to the Army recruiter. They seemed to offer me a pretty decent deal. And so I went ahead, and I don't remember exactly what they call that, kind of like a split. I actually had a couple months right after high school that they did some training and a bunch of different things. So we got to go out and go rock climbing and do a bunch of kind of cool stuff, which, intrigued me even more because of the athletic side of it.
What age were
And
you?
what's that?
What age were you?
So I was 18. I
Ah.
actually, yeah. So, which is kind of funny because I had to do second grade twice. That's how great my schooling was. But yeah, so I had just literally basically just turned 18. Well, actually, April, yeah, May. It was actually the month after my 18th birthday that I actually went in. And then from that point on, then my Army career started. Went into communications originally. Then, communications was okay. I mean, you're doing all the training. Basic training sucks, just like any other basic training sucks. But I was very adaptable, I guess. I mean, really, when you look at the military in the U.S., there's really actually only 1% of the population actually joins the military in the U.S. So
Mm.
it's really not a lot of people when you turn around and think about it per capita. Um, but there are certainly, larger areas per capita that, where the recruiters have a little bit more of being able to pick from, I guess. And so turned around, went into communications. Ended up my first duty station was actually being in Germany, in Gießen, Germany. They actually stuck me with field artillery, which sucked because I was in the field about 260 days out of the year.
Wow.
And basically, the easiest way to compile that together was go out for 30 to 40 days, come back, take everything apart, clean it all up, pack it all back up, pack it back in, and then just wait until the next call that we were going to go out again. So a lot of people, including myself, would go out, drink, get in trouble. And our first sergeant at the time he was pretty much I would guess you could say, pretty much a straight leather neck. He would just say, leave him in prison, leave him in jail. We'll pick him up on the way out. Now I have my duty roster for guard duty. And that's pretty much how it worked. And then so I did that for, I guess, a couple of years. And then at that point in time, I decided this was not what I wanted. Unfortunately, I had not found, probably any good counseling or anything like that of like, hey, guess what? If you really just don't like this, you can find a different job. You can go and do something else, and so I chose not to. I chose to get out. But what I did choose to do was actually stay in Germany. So I flew back to the States, spent some time with my family, and then jumped back on a plane and flew back over to Germany. And then I stayed in Germany for about 2 years, and met a gal in the UK actually, from the UK, and ended up going to the UK. Ended up living in the Oxford area for a while, and that was fairly disastrous. I guess it wasn't. It wasn't bad by any means. I actually enjoyed the UK. I mean, I really do enjoy the UK sense of humor. I mean, it's definitely a piss taking, sense of humor. They make fun of everybody and anything. So if you're thin skinned, it's definitely not the place to go by any means. So a lot of great people. I mean, I met all kinds of great people. And that was, I lived, I guess, for a long time, kind of out of a duffel bag. Didn't really have a place per se, would work for a little while, which was kind of interesting because I couldn't actually work in the UK on the visa that I was on. But I used to do obviously a lot of black work and
Cash in
just
hand.
make a little bit of money
Yeah.
here and there. That's kind of what kept me going. And then I actually hit a pretty, I guess, a pretty dry patch. I was like living off of like a can of SpaghettiOs and maybe lucky to get a Snickers bar once a week, kind of lifestyle. And then the guy that I was actually living with, his brother had some ferrets. And so we gathered the ferrets up. We went out into the like farmlands and caught a whole bunch of rabbits and had rabbit stew and rabbit spaghetti and rabbit baked rabbit and everything rabbit. And then we ran out of the rabbit. And then at that point in time, it was time to think about something else. So I don't know. I don't know if it was the Lord that figured it out or I figured it out, but I grabbed a ladder half and a bucket of soapy water and a squeegee and a sponge and just I ended up connecting into some guy's, unfortunate for him, window cleaning route and ended up making actually quite a bit of money. So I think the like in a day I was like I made up almost up to like 50 pounds in like a day, and so I ended up finding out that my ferry ride back to Germany was only 33 pounds. So I actually had a pretty decent meal, had myself opportunity to buy up some snacks, and then I was like, sayonara, see you UK. I'm out of here now at this point. Went back to Germany, stayed in Germany for a little while again. And then, well, then here comes the girls again. Ended up with a Dutch girl and ended up moving to the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, I actually stayed about 5 years. I really enjoyed the Netherlands. I really liked it. I mean, very easygoing people. Obviously, a lot of people from England are there. So, I mean, speaking English over there in the Netherlands was, I mean, that was the language. I actually, I learned Dutch, but I didn't speak it very much. My Dutch friends would speak Dutch to me, and I would speak English to them. It was just an easier way of understanding each other. We didn't have to kind of beat around the bush on a word or something like that. And then every once in a while, I'd run into a Dutch person that would be like, well, you lived here for 5 years and you don't speak any Dutch. And then so I would just switch into Dutch, and they were like, oh, you do speak Dutch? And I'm like, yeah, well, it was you that decided I didn't speak Dutch. It wasn't me. And then they would turn around, and then it was okay again. It was like, oh, well, you just speak English to me and I'll speak Dutch to you. And I'm like, okay, great, man. It works out great. This is what me and my friends do. And played in a band for a long time when I was in the Netherlands, which was just pretty much sex, drugs, and rock and roll for sure.
What kind of music was it?
Psychobilly music. For anybody, I'm sure like most any English people probably understand psychobilly, a little bit of punk and rockabilly and all that other stuff, and with the big quiffs and all that. But it was more about the drinking and the drugs than it was about anything else. I was just a show. I was just the big American guy that was a show. I'd get up there and pretty much try and destroy stuff. And so, kind of like I was telling Simon before, like we'd probably play 2-3 times a month. We'd be able to make enough money to rent a van and to be able to maybe stay in the hotel, or if that was actually part of the contract, we'd stay in the hotel or whatever. So we never really made any money. We just traveled around and we just played and had a good time and got stoned and drunk and all that other stuff. And so life was good. And then it kind of got to a point where it just, again, kind of started drying up a little bit. I had gotten married in the Netherlands, and that didn't really go super well. I guess it was, I stole her from one guy and another guy stole her from me. So that's kind of how all that works out, I guess. So kind of a little karma stuff. And so then I decided to actually go back to the States, and that would have been in 1995. So not to turn around and date myself by any means, but I got over to Germany originally. I graduated in '87. And so when I turned around and left the Netherlands, that would have been in '95. And then I stayed in the States for quite some time. Which I think that I kind of probably needed a little reprieve from a lot of the drugs and the alcohol, even though I continued to drink the alcohol.
What were you doing for work when you were back in the States?
So when I was actually in the Netherlands, I actually learned how to weld. And so that's what I used to do a lot of times is I would would weld for a little while through like a temp agency or something like that. I'd make some money, and then I'd just hang out, go travel, drink, do all kinds of stuff. And then when I ran out of money, I'd go back and I'd weld again for a little while. And so that's pretty much what I picked up when I was in the States, is I just continued to keep welding when I was in the States. And then let's see, and then I guess my traveling days started back up again when I was in the States. So originally I went back to Colorado again. From Colorado, I went to South Dakota, and from South Dakota, I ended up going to Washington. Oh no, California. And then from California, I ended up going to Washington. And then from Washington, I ended up going to Montana. So for all of you out there, that was one thing that my mom dubbed me from the day that I was born, and she will attest to that today, is that I will be a child of the world. And I certainly have. I've tested those boundaries quite a bit. And so, so I was in Montana for about 15 years. I'm not going to say unfortunately, fortunately, because we were supposed to learn from our mistakes. I had been married a few times. They never really worked out, and I don't think I really am able to put the blame on them as much as I put the blame on myself. You know, when you point your finger, there's 4 fingers pointing at yourself. And so I was definitely the catalyst to a lot of the confusion and the chaos and all that. Brought some stuff from the military as well. I ended up, after I got back to the States, I actually went back into the military again.
How old were you when you went back in the military?
Let's see, 1999. So, wow. Let's see, 25. That would be, so I was probably 35.
Was it easy to go back in? Because that's quite old for you.
I don't think that it wasn't necessarily difficult to get back in. I mean, obviously I still had to go through the same requirements, paperwork wise, physical wise, all that other stuff. I just didn't have to go back to, I didn't have to go back to basic training again, which was kind of nice. And the way they had it set up at the time, I don't know if it's like that anymore. I could actually go back in as the same rank as I actually was when I got out, which was an E4. I somehow was able to stay out of enough trouble to not get busted down or anything like that when I was in. And so I went in as an E4, went in actually as a medic this time instead of...
For those who aren't ex-military, what's an E4? Is that sergeant?
That I wouldn't know. So you got private, which is nothing. And you got E2, which is, basically private E2. And then you have like a PFC, which is private first class. And then you have your specialist, or E4.
So you didn't have stripes?
That's what I did not have stripes. Yeah. Right. So when it comes to E4, if you're in a command, like a command or a combat unit, you could actually be a buck sergeant, what they would consider as a buck sergeant. Or, because the E5 is actually where you actually start getting stripes. Okay, right, That's where you get your 3 stripes. And then as a buck sergeant, basically as a corporal, you would have 2 stripes. Okay. And so, but I was a specialist because I was in communications at the time. And then going into the medical world, which I really enjoyed. That's kind of where where I became, even though I continued to be athletic, that's where my scholastic side really kind of started opening up, because, really books, got to learn kind of like type thing. And I really found the medical field kind of like a gold mine of information. I mean, the human body is actually is pretty resilient to a certain point. So, I mean, I've been in plenty of motorcycle accidents, so I know that I'm not 10 feet tall and bulletproof either. So,
did they push you to be a medic, or did you want to be a medic? I mean, how did that happen?
No, I actually, when I went down to sign back up, they actually kind of gave me a choice of some different jobs that I could do. And one of them was basically like missile defense, but I literally was in this like APC unit, this tin can that I couldn't even stand up straight in. I mean, I literally I was bent down like this and my back was against the top of the roof. And I'm like, no, I ain't doing this shit. And then they turned around and they were like, well, the only other thing that we can offer you is a medic. It's a little bit like MASH. I don't know how many of you know the show MASH. And it really truly kind of was. I mean, everybody was on a first name basis. There was like very little, at times, little command and control. But I mean, it was good. And after I did a lot of my training stuff, I ended up actually in a training division. So I ended up actually traveling quite a bit, which was really good for me. I mean, I probably have been to 40 of the 50 states, just traveling there to teach medical classes and, advance other people in their medical skills and different things like that, which I enjoyed. I guess it gave me the opportunity to just live out of a duffel bag again. It's like pack it up, have it ready in the closet. When it's time, you just pick it back up and you take off again. So I did a lot of traveling with that. And then I guess let's see, what was that? So through this time, I mean, I had been promoted several times. I actually retired as an E8 or a master sergeant, and I had done probably one of my favorite special duties. I was actually a drill sergeant for about 2.5 years, which I did really much. I did enjoy, and I was actually part of a drill sergeant unit at the time. So a lot of, I guess, line mentality, I guess, combat mentality. Was the majority of the people that I spent my time with that actually, knew the appropriate command and control of how things work, and actually that's how they function. They did things. In the medical field, not so much. Everybody's on a first name basis. It's like, hey, hi, how are you doing? No parade rest, no, at ease, none, everybody's friends. So, and then I guess at that point in time, I got promoted into a combat support hospital. And in the combat support hospital, I was actually the chief ward master, which actually kind of runs the hospital. Make sure that everybody's doing their training, make sure that all the supplies are ordered and all these other things. Obviously, you have a bunch of NCOs and stuff underneath you that are doing all these things, but just to make sure that everybody's doing their job and doing what they're supposed to do. And then I got deployed when I was in E7 before I made E8. Went to Afghanistan and, ended up, unfortunately bringing too much of that back with me. And so, but I had been there for 5 months and actually had ended up, I don't know whether it's contracted, but anyway, ended up with 2 blood clots. I had one in my thigh, in my femoral vein, and then I actually had one in the popliteal, which is behind your knee, which was completely closed off. And so that ended up basically sending me back home. And then at that point in time, even though my career was accelerating, my medical side was decelerating. And obviously those eventually come to a head. And so I had another blood clot at another point in time a little bit later on. And so the Army decided that, we can no longer sustain you, which I think that some of us, so I ended up with basically with a medical discharge or a medical retirement, I guess. They did give me a full retirement out of it. Other than financially, they didn't give me the full retirement. They just gave me the benefits from it, which still is a blessing in itself for sure. So yeah, so at that point in time, I kind of just moseyed around again a little bit more, traveling around here, state to state. I was in Montana for about 15 years. Rode in a couple motorcycle clubs. I was actually in one, Tribe of Judah, which is a ministry club that actually ministers to one percenters, to the, I guess the, the hardcore bikers. And then went to a group called Ethos, which was also kind of a ministry to the one percenter group. And then in 22, I've been in 3 accidents. That's the reason I say that we're not bulletproof by any means. So in 22, I actually ended up getting in an accident where I got hit from the rear, and ended up flying off the bike and with a head bleed. Was in ICU for 24 hours and ended up, it's kind of funny how the brain finally like turned on, because I was actually in the medical unit, and my wife at the time, which was kind of interesting because when I came to, well, I guess when my brain turned on, because it was never completely off, I was awake a lot of the time anyway. I turned around and I was like, I could tell that I was in the hospital, and I'm like, what happened? Why did they put me under? I think my verbiage was, why did they put me under anesthesia? Because that's exactly how it felt when I came to, was like, all groggy and drunk. And she said, you didn't go under anesthesia. You got in a motorcycle accident. So I mean, ultimately, for any of you that know big motorcycles, Harley Davidsons, motor mount bolts, there's 4 of them for Harley Davidson, and I got hit hard enough that it sheared all 4 motor mount bolts.
Wow.
And so I flew about 15 feet. Matter of fact, I was the president actually of Ethos at the time, and our vice president, who was like, I mean, I'm a Smurf in comparison to this guy. This guy is like literally like a walking Viking, man.
And you're 6'4", so
Yeah. Well, Josh is even bigger. I mean, his hands, are twice the size of my hands. Well, he turned around, and I actually, when he came up to me, I wasn't breathing, and he turned around and gave me a sternal rub. And when I came to, he said I was just fighting, and they had like 4 people on me. And so anyway, so it's kind of interesting, and well, I'll get to that, I guess. But so I wasn't on motorcycles for a long time after that. I turned around, and they told me I couldn't ride a motorcycle for about 4 months until my head was good, if my head was ever any good. But to a point that when I actually had a chance to get back on a motorcycle, which I had bought one almost right straight away, there literally was 0 joy. I mean, the joy, the wind therapy, all the wonderful things that we think about on motorcycles was just gone. And so at that point in time, I had I guess I had 2 Harleys that I sold off. I had a KLR that I sold off. I got rid of all my bike parts. I got rid of all my bike tools. I used to do all my own work on my motorcycles and everything. And pretty much just, yeah, I'm done with this. I was done with the motorcycle clubs, even though I still had a lot of friends that were involved with it. And so, yeah, and so that kind of, I guess that was a closing chapter at one point in time in my life, just giving up motorcycles, which, here I'm in the Philippines now. It's a whole different world, but we'll get to that here in a second. So I was, off of bikes for quite a while. And then I ended up moving. I got divorced. Ended up moving from Montana back to South Dakota. South Dakota is a pretty quiet area, I would say. I mean, I lived in a town that, I don't know, 11,000 people, not very much. I mean, you literally could drive from one side of town to the other in about 5 minutes. Everything is 5 minutes away, obviously. And so, and then I got on Christian Filipina. I'm not even quite sure exactly how I ended up on Christian Filipina, through some advertisement or something. And then being a believer in Christ, I'm like, hey, if I could find a decent woman, this would probably be the spot to do it. And so, and I was pretty much kind of slowing down with things. And obviously, I hadn't been drinking for a long time. I quit drinking, quit doing the drugs, all of that. And then ended up with a long distance relationship with a lovely Filipina. And so we were together, I guess, long distance for probably about 3 months. And that's when I decided, like, I'd never been to Asia. Out of all my military time, I mean, Europe, I guess, well, the closest I'd been to Asia was Afghanistan. Um, and so I decided that, hey, I want to check this thing out. And so, and then it was the Philippines. So, started doing a bunch of research on the Philippines and started watching other people's vlogs and trying to figure all this thing out. And I think through a lot of that, it really kind of, it sparked that wild hair in my butt again of like, you need to travel, you need to get out, you need to, and honestly, I love being an American, but some of the crap that goes on in the United States, just like maybe obviously in the UK, because I follow some of that too, because I still have a lot of English friends, that there's just parts of it that you're just like, I'm tired of this shit, and it's super expensive. And so finding out that the Philippines was fairly reasonably priced, me actually being, on my military compensation, there for a while, I actually officially kind of retired at 55, which, again, a blessing in itself. But there were some of the injuries that I had that were preventing me from actually going and having an actual job, that I wasn't just suffering through. So I ended up, Social Security, disability, and then with my pension from the military, I decided that, hey, I'm going to go in. This is worth taking a look. And so I turned around, and in May, I came over here. May this year, came over here to the Philippines and met my Filipina, and actually ended up really enjoying the Philippines. And
where did you go to? Where did you go
so I flew into Cebu, and from Cebu I ended up going to Gahulinan City, which is, like, right now we are actually still on the island of Negros, but we're in Dumaguete, and so Gahulinan City would actually be about 3 hours north of, where we are in Dumaguete City. And so in that month of May, my Filipina and I, we kind of traveled around a little bit. We came down to Dumaguete, kind of checked things out a little bit.
And this was the same Filipino you'd been in the 3-month LDR with?
Excuse me?
The same Filipino you'd been in the 3D LDR with?
And so one thing that we decided to do, I was definitely a participant in it for sure, because there was quite a bit of paperwork and stuff that I had to put together. We decided to do a civil marriage, which, in reference to civil marriage here in the Philippines, would be getting married here in the Philippines, with a Philippine mayor, and then kind of the same thing. So we never actually filed for, like a fiance visa, spousal visa, any of that other stuff. That was one thing that I basically asked her from the very beginning was, would you be opposed to not going to the United States and just staying in the Philippines? And she was like, I prefer to stay in the Philippines. And I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere now. And so we ended up getting married in that month of May also. So, it was a very busy month for sure.
So basically, from the moment you started talking online, So the day you got married was about 4 months.
It was about 4 months.
And when you flew in the first time, were
Yeah.
you expecting to get married in that month? Or
We had talked about it. We had been kind of discussing it a little bit. So, with all the apostille stuff of paperwork that you have to get apostilled through, I don't know how that is in the UK, but so the apostille process is nothing more than is a notary that is recognized as in a foreign government, is basically what the apostille process is. And so certain paperwork, the only way that you can get it apostilled in the United States is it actually has to go to the state that it originated in to be apostilled and then be sent back. That was a little bit of a fiasco. And, I figured, again, as a believer in Christ, I figured, like, Lord, you got this, you'll figure it out. If this is what's supposed to happen, then it'll all come together. And crazily enough, it actually just literally kind of flowed. There was a couple little hiccups here and there, but nothing like terrible by any means. It couldn't be looked at and say, okay, yeah, we can do this.
Well, I'm no expert on any of these things because I'm not married here. But if you manage to do it in that space of time, you've done very well. I've heard people it's taken months and months and months for. So
and then there were a couple things that I obviously, when I came into Cebu, when I flew into Cebu, there's one document that you have to actually do that's like on the Philippine side to verify. Trying to remember exactly what they call it now. I should actually know it, but I don't. But anybody that ever had any questions could certainly get a hold of me.
If you think about it, I'll put it in the bottom of the description.
Yeah. So basically what it is it's like to go to the embassy, the Cebu embassy, the U.S. embassy, and basically to get a notarized document that, no, I am not married in the United States. And that is only recognized in the Philippines as so all my, I don't say this proudly, but all my divorce decrees, I had to like, literally write them all down in my ex-wives' names and when we were married and all this other stuff. So that was kind of a blast from the past that I had to go through. I was like, oh yeah, well, that was
a big form.
Yeah, it was interesting. And so, so after I got that done, then you put in your paperwork here in the Philippines, and then they have basically what they call it's a 10-day wait. It's a 10-day wait period. And then so you basically have that 10 days, and it's kind of almost like in the US where, like, when you get married, they actually like put your name up on the bulletin board and people get to go by and look at it and say, oh, I know Patrick Kling. Isn't he married to so-and-so? Kind of like type thing of like to verify that, your marriage material. And so we went through that 10 days, and that kind of put us at, well, actually we ended up getting married on the 21st of May. And so we had that 10-day period. And then we traveled around quite a bit, actually, in that month that I was here. So we went to like Bacolod, we went to Iloilo, we spent time here in Dumaguete, we went over to Cebu. We kind of which is kind of cool because here in the Philippines, everything is so close together that you can really kind of, I mean, you go from one province to another province, it's like a whole nother world sometimes, so. So we kind of traveled around a little bit, and in Guhuanan City, and matter of fact, Simon and I are just a little bit earlier today, we were talking about, how many expats actually live in the Dumaguete area. So there is no way that you are never going to run into an expat in Dumaguete. It's just not going to happen. If you don't want to see expats, it's because you're trying to avoid expats. It's not because you're not going to run into them. In Guhuanan City, where my wife is from, there's about maybe 12. I think in that month, I literally saw like maybe 2. One of them didn't want nothing to do with me at all. So there we go. avoid all expats. And then another guy, we kind of ran into each other in coffee and sat down and kind of chatted. He was from like, I think Georgia, I think if I remember correctly. So we chatted for a little bit, and great guy. Had actually just moved to Cahuanan City, so I guess he didn't know any better. Maybe he's not supposed to talk to expats or whatever, or hasn't got into that frame of mind yet. Um, and then, so I went back to the States for 2 months after we got married. Left here like the 4th of June. Flew back to the States and basically just started putting all my ducks in a row of I'm moving to the Philippines. I'm getting rid of all my shit, which is very freeing. Sold my truck, got rid of everything. I did have a house in South Dakota that I had bought, which gave me a great opportunity to rent it to a veteran friend of mine, who I know is very particular about everything. He's a former Marine, and so he takes care of the house, and he gives me a little bit of rent money, and so he's taking care of it, and so everything is good, and we stay in constant contact. Um, and so, yeah, so after 2 months, there was a few other things that I had to put together paperwork wise of like, making sure that my will was taken care of and my estate was taken care of and all these other different things. And so, which I had a chance to turn around and take care of, which I really needed to kind of take care of anyway, because I hadn't paid any attention to any of that stuff. And then I turned around and came back over in August of this year. So I would certainly be what would be considered as fresh off of the boat.
You are, mate. That's just
I
2.5 months.
It's like, yeah, exactly. I am about as fresh off the boat as they come. Lots and lots of learning to do here in the Philippines for sure. The only learning that you won't do here in the Philippines is because you are just, I'm just going to say it outright, whether anybody likes it or not. It just means that you're ignorant to not want to learn it. There is a lot of learning curves here. It's a completely different culture for sure, especially from American. Because, well, even American to UK, I mean, there's a lot of cultural difference even going on there too. But I think in that time that I, traveled around Europe, that I kind of understood that, what cultural differences are, and that there's some gives or some takes, and you got to kind of figure it out where you sit and where you fit into it. And the Philippines is exactly that. Simon and I have spoken about it, and I think most expats will agree that, the Philippines is a great place to be, but there certainly are things that you will need to accept and you will need to be able to tolerate.
It can be challenging.
Yeah, it can be, very much so. And if you don't adapt super well, you might be not a very nice person. I don't know. They're here for sure. But at the same time, I think maybe some of them even stay here because it's as cheap as it is to live. And it's just an easier way. Either way, I think that the other side of the Philippines is there is certainly areas that you can go in the Philippines where there's as much comfort as you want, or there's as little comfort as you want, but you're still going to have a certain amount of what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to tolerate. I'm not a concrete jungle guy. I'm not in BCG. I'm not in Manila. I'm not in Cebu. There's a reason why. I kind of like the smaller provinces. I mean, even though Dumaguete is considered as probably a city, it's just a large province is really all it is. So there's traffic jams. And that's where I was going to kind of get at is here for like 3 years, I gave up on motorcycles, and here I'm riding a scooter again already in the Philippines, which is nothing like riding a motorcycle in the United States. It's a free for all by all means, and there is certainly a amount of that organized chaos. I mean, it's really the only way that you can explain it. It is an organized chaos out there. And you literally have to be on a swivel when you're riding here because people are riding at you in your lane. People are turning left all the way from the right hand side. People are crossing solid white lines. Uh, there's there's no there's very little accountability because there's no police to police any of it. There's no tickets to give. I would even venture as far as to say that probably 50% of the people out there that are riding motorcycles, maybe not the ones that are driving cars, but the ones that are riding motorcycles probably don't have a license anyway.
I'd say closer to 90%.
Yeah, it probably is a higher amount. And the other unfortunate side of it is if they hit you or if something happened, they would not have the money to fix anything. They would not have the money to pay for your medical bills, any of that other stuff. They just don't give a shit. And it's just part of that. It's just part of it, that comes with the country. Um, but on the other side of it, it's beautiful. The Filipinos have a way of, I don't know, I was thinking about it actually this morning when I was like riding to the gym this morning, is like the Filipinos have a way of like literally just living for the moment, so much in the moment that they just have no conception whatsoever of anything else that's going on. They just don't. I
It's
mean,
a
you get,
Southeast Asia thing. They live in the
yeah,
now.
yeah. I mean, they do. They just live in the now, and it's like, so they're on their scooter. They've already taken the rear view mirrors off, so they don't see anything behind them anyway, and they don't care if anything's behind them. They just care. They don't even pay any attention to anything that's on the side of them. I actually, on my scooter, I actually replaced my scooter horn with actually a car horn. So it's actually kind of humorous when I blow my horn because it definitely like gains some attention because they think they're in like a tussle with a car instead of another motorcycle. Um, so it's different. It is definitely different. I mean, here, I rode Harley Davidsons for many, many a years, but it's just I don't know if I became a little more humble in my days or something like that, but there's just no room to ride one through the city, or at least a larger one like I was used to riding. And most Harley Davidsons are air cooled. I mean, they're coming out with the fluid cooled ones now for sure. But there's just really no room for it. But yet, the scooter that I decided to get was one that I could take a little bit off roads, more off, X adventure stuff like. So it's small enough to ride around in the city. It's a ADV 350. I can ride it around in the city. I can ride it around on long road trips and stuff like that, and it's fairly comfortable. And you start getting panniers and top boxes and all that other stuff on it. So which I enjoy, which I like, and it brings a certain freedom because, again, yeah, I'm 6'3", 250 pounds. When I get in a trike here in the Philippines, that's usually my saying is like these trikes are built for 3 Filipinos or 1 Patrick. And honestly, those trike riders, they don't like it because they can't pull over and get more money and pick more people up. Yeah. So they want to get rid of me as fast as possible, which is okay in my book too. So yeah, so being fresh off the boat here in the Philippines, a lot to learn, and that's the reason, I meet expats and I talk to expats and ask them questions about, certain things, and and I guess that's always been kind of my thing. Simon and I talked about it as well a little bit earlier. Was um, kind of give a guy a fish every day, and he'll just take the fish. But it's the point of being able to teach him how to fish so he can start getting his own fish. And from my military career, I believe that like a lot of us, I don't know, not all of us, but I like to network. So I want to learn stuff so I can pass it on to other people that they need to find out that information or learn, or we learn from our experiences. And so, again, you just ask somebody, it's like, well, hey, I got this situation. And, they were like, oh, well, I went through that and this is how I did it. And so it doesn't mean you have to do it the same way. It just means that is the avenue to start, looking down, start researching. There's certainly things that, Simon and I have talked about, or many expats, healthcare is not the same here by any means in the Philippines. It doesn't mean that you can't go someplace to get the healthcare that is a little bit more probably up to par of what you're used to. It just means you're probably not going to get it here necessarily unless you go to like maybe a larger city or something like that. So again, there's just a give and take of coming to the Philippines. But at this point, I would say I do not regret it. I do not regret marrying my Filipina. I do not regret living here in the Philippines. And I think it was a great opportunity. And again, being here is such a hub to like, travel to Vietnam, travel to Malaysia, travel to Singapore, travel to Hong Kong, go to Thailand. You're literally like in this like huge area. I mean, Australia is just down the way, and then I have not hit that point with the grind is so bad that I need to go back to the States to figure out that the States isn't where I want to be. But many of them get there.
Hopefully, so. Patrick, you won't. I mean, hopefully you won't. I mean, it's early days. You've been here 3 months. From what I've seen of you, you've got the right attitude. You want to learn. You accept the challenges.
Yeah.
You still find your feet, but I'm sure you'll make it. I personally think you'll thrive here. But only time will tell.
Yeah.
But it's all about attitude, as you said.
Yeah.
Well, he's got a lovely wife. Name's Dina. Obviously, it's I say, you've done it all very quickly.
I wouldn't recommend doing it as quick as I did. I would say take your time.
Don't say that. She'll watch the video.
Well, no, I'm not saying as in. I'm saying as like what we have is. I mean, and I was mentioning that to Simon too. It's like even if you've been with your girlfriend for how long, and then you end up getting married. Guess what? You don't take two imperfect people and put them together and make perfection. There's a certain amount of work to it.
It takes compromise.
And I don't regret marrying Dina by any means. What I do regret, and I point the finger at myself, is that there are times that I'm not quite as adaptable as I would like to be. That there are certain things that I mean, the language barrier is something that kind of gets in, and then I have a little bit of a hearing problem, so a lot of times I have to ask, like, well, can you say that again?
Yeah, but it's early days. You'll get used to that. You'll get used to that.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and
your patience tolerance will grow, and you'll become less afraid.
Yeah. But I love her to death, and and I think it's important. Like some of the stuff that I'm still even doing is just making sure that if and when I expire and I go away, that she's able to function. Just as well, or at some type of area of living that she's comfortable with now at this point in time. Because I mean, even as Simon said earlier today, it's like that's what the Filipinos looking for. They're looking for a better life. I think that all of us are. It doesn't matter where we live. We're always looking for a better life. We just have an opportunity in the UK and in the US and stuff like that to live above our means because of debt and all that other stuff, where they don't necessarily have that here in the Philippines. They live in the style that they are in, and sometimes they can't get out of that style. So just parts of the puzzle that we all need to realize, and how that actually works, and being able to come together, I mean, as husband and wife, and being able to figure out those tough times. Sometimes those tough times are, we're not going to talk for an hour, and then we come back and we talk, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Ellen would kill for an hour not having to talk to me. She could just play on her phone. Well,
you guys do a great job. I enjoy watching you guys together. You guys do a great job.
Well, I really appreciate you sitting down with today, Patrick. It's been a very interesting interview. You have led a very interesting life. I've been quite lucky the last few interviews. I've interviewed interesting people.
Yeah.
Not everyone is as interesting.
Well, and it's been awesome meeting you too.
Thank you, mate. Thank you, mate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I say, I wish you the best in your Philippine adventure.
Thank you very much.
And I'm sure everyone who watched the video will do.
Yeah.
And hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for sitting down with Patrick. If you did enjoy the video, smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed, why the hell not? It will make Patrick very happy if you do. Well, it'll make me happy if you do.
Yeah. Lift Simon up. Lift Simon up.
But whether you do, whether you don't, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe.
Yeah.
Be lucky.